I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us, I'm going to unwrap an early Christmas present for all of you. I'm a big fan of this man's work. I've been following him for years, not because he's some kind of a soothsayer, but because he takes a look at current stories and projects trends into the future. If you guessed Gerald Celente, publisher of the Trends Journal, you guessed correct. Gerald Celente, thank you for coming to us from New York.
Thanks for having me on, Greg. It's always wonderful being on with you.
Well, a lot of people don't realize this. I do because I follow the economy. A lot of times you comment geopolitically, which you're good at. But I think you are underrated on your assessment of the economy, and I want to look into the rest of 2014 and really into 2015 to see, what stories that you're reading and what projections you have for the future of the economy. I mean, last week David Stockman was out on Fox Business, and much to their chagrin, this is going to blow up. It's going to be bad. Yes, they put it off. Yes, I was wrong for a couple of years, but it's bad. What do you see in the future trends for the economy that a lot of people are not seeing?
Well, I think the David Stockmans and the Dr. Paul Craig Roberts are, and a number of us, and just a little background, I really got my notoriety in trend forecasting. It began in 1987, when in January of that year I had predicted the stock market crash, and then also the Asian currency crisis. And, of course, the panic of '08. I took the domain name out in 2007. So my background is in economics as well as geopolitics. Moving ahead, it's all in oil. It's in everyone's face. We've been talking about oil prices since they peaked in June of this year. And now you're seeing over a 30% decline in Brent crude and West Texas. This is big. It's not a manipulated market. This is real. Yes, supply is up, but demand is down. And demand is down big time. You don't have to look at that as an assumption. You can look at it as a fact. And here's the fact. The fact is, take a look at China, one of the biggest consumers of energy and commodities in the world. Look at the data coming out. You're seeing investment in China going down, to 2000 levels. You're seeing production falling back to Great Recession levels in 2008, 2009, factory production. Every indicator coming out of China, one of my favorite is that people really don't look at that much, is to understand that China, again, the second largest economy in the world, 30%, between 25 to 30% of his GDP is based on real estate. And you want to talk about a bubble. Woof! They got a nice one over there. You're seeing prices tumbling over 10% after rising over 27% last year. You're looking at the reality that if the United States and Europe stop consuming or slow down their consuming, China's not manufacturing. If China's not manufacturing, well, all those natural resource countries or companies, such as Australia, Brazil, Bolivia, Chile, aren't selling their natural resources. This is a global slowdown. It's in front of everybody's eyes, and oil is telling the story. It's right there in front of us. Then, take a look what's going on over there in Japan. As you say, that I keep saying, when all else fails, they take you to war. Here's the scenario. Go back to the 1930s. You had the Panic of 1929, the Great Depression, currency wars, trade wars, World War. Go back to the Panic of '08. Recession/depression. There's a depression going on in Europe. There's a depression. They don't call it that. No, 30% unemployment. I got an idea. Let's call it a recession because that's what they have in Greece. You got it in Spain. You have it in Portugal. You have it in Ireland. You have 40% youth unemployment in Italy. So then you go to the currency war. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll call it Abenomics. Abenomics. Here's this cat that's pumped in the equivalent of 4 times the America's GDP into stimulating their economy. That wasn't good enough. It failed. The fact is, Abenomics failed. You go back and look at September's data, you saw a GDP fall off of over 7%. But I got an idea. Hey, trick or treat. They did it on Halloween Day. What they did was they boosted Abenomics to the equivalent of the United States pumping in $3 trillion a year. So what did that do? Well, everybody knows that the yen is declining now. It's at over a 7-year low against the dollar, down 50% against the Chinese yuan, down 40% of the South Korean won. What does that add up to? Currency wars, because that ensues a trade war. That's right, your economy stinks. You gotta juice it up. Devalue the currency so you can sell more of your stuff to other countries. Recession, depression, currency wars, trade wars, and you know the rest, world war.
So in 2015, is this setting the table for a tremendous slowdown in the world starting now into 2015? And then are we going to get some kind of war in an end of 15 or 16? Or, I mean, you know, there's all kinds of reports of wars and rumors of wars and upheaval and violence and stuff around the globe. What are you looking at for 2015 in terms of the economy and its next step?
Well, the economy is where it's going, and that's on a decline. It's unquestionable. The only reason the equity markets are boosted up, you go back to last week, Greg. Look at the Bank of England announced they're going to keep their interest rates low. Look at the Swedish did. They're keeping it low. Look what the United States. Oh, we may not raise them until the middle of 2015. These are record low interest rates. Where are you going to put your money? You can't put it in the bank. You don't get anything back. Matter of fact, if you live in Europe, they're even doing negative interest rates. Not making it up, man. You got 500,000 euros from business or personal investments, and you're putting it in the bank. Well, I'll tell you what, if it's one of them German banks over there, they just announced a few weeks ago that you owe them 0.25% to keep your money there. So they're boosting the equity markets. It's a Ponzi scheme with these record low interest rates. At some point, it has to explode. But you can hear the explosions. You remember Obama back this past summer makes the announcement to the American people, we got a humanitarian mission over there in Iraq. No, we're not going back. We're going to save them Christians on the mountain. You forgot that one? Hey, and how about them Yazidis? Everybody knows what a Yazidi is. You either got them next door or one parked in your driveway. But we're going to save them Yazidis. We're not going back into Iraq. And no boots on the ground. And now look at it. We're at war with Syria. They're dropping bombs in Syria. Hey, we don't need the Constitution. We'll do whatever we like. The wars are expanding throughout the Middle East. The wars are expanding in Ukraine. Oh, it came out last week. Ukraine economy. It's declined 20%. The GDP is down 20%. The war drums are beating all over. You're looking at the destabilization going on in Mexico with this latest crisis. Oh, and then adding to that, now the Russians are bringing their bombers and they're patrolling the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico and other areas in response to, hey, the United States is sending their aircraft into Estonia and doing war games. You can see where this is going.
How long could they keep this up? I mean, you know, last week, almost every market they've paid fines. Last week, the latest group of banks in the forex market, which is a huge $5 trillion a day. I mean, they paid 4 point something billion, which is a rounding error in a daily in that market.
Yeah.
You know, we have all this massive fraud with Forex, LIBOR. They're settling, UBS is settling charges for, the manipulation of gold prices, which, you know, anybody who mentioned that a year or two ago had a tinfoil hat on. LIBOR. Mortgage securities, all this, these derivatives, the bond market, with the interest rates derivatives, they said they stopped QE, and there are all kinds of reports about how the big banks are buying the U.S. Treasury bonds. I mean, is all this fraud? They don't prosecute any because they're afraid they'll crash the system, and they're doing the bidding of the government. I think of the governments. I think, but is this a sign that that things are coming to a head? That they're going to be left with, as you say, when all else fails, they take you to war. Is this a sign of that?
Yes, and on the bank, matter of fact, we're coming out with the next trends for 2015, and one of them is going to be bankism, not capitalism. Capitalism's dead. This isn't capitalism. 4 words killed it. Too big to fail. It's in front of us. You went down the list, and now you also mentioned briefly about how quantitative easing hasn't stopped. They keep doing it. They just changed the game. First, the Fed gave the banks the money for their worthless garbage, the mortgage-backed securities, and buying bonds. And now the banks got all that dough, and now they're buying it back. It's just a Ponzi scheme, shifting it back and forth. But the banks have a better deal because they also make interest on their buying it back. So when we're calling it bankism, Greg, it's a takeover. And nobody wants to call it what it is. The banks are in control. It's not that the government is doing the bidding of the banks. The government is the banks. They just got fronts in there. What are people, deaf, stupid, dumb, and blind? Let's go over the faces and call a spade a spade. Who was the guy that deregulated the Glass-Steagall Act?
Clinton.
And who was the Treasury Secretary?
Oh.
Little Robert Rubin. Little Robert Rubin. Yeah, the cat that after he left, he got, $170 million for being a brilliant strategist from who? The Citigroup gang or one of them? And where did he come from? Son of a gun. Goldman Sachs. Blow me away. Couldn't have figured that out. How about the guy that invented too big to fail? Yeah, you remember him. What was his name? Henry Paulson under Bush? Oh, yeah, where did he come from? Goldman Sachs. Yeah, I think he's playing in Frankenstein movies now with Disney. Oh, and who was the guy? Who was the guy that brought down MF Global? John the Slime Corzine. Yeah, you remember him, the governor and senator of Jersey. Where was he from? Goldman Sachs. Hey, what's the cat's name that's running the Bank of England? Oh, yeah, another Goldman Sachs guy, huh? Yeah, was it Mark Carney, con man? Yeah, one of them. Hey, who's the head of the European Central Bank? Oh, Mario Draghi. Wasn't he the head of the Goldman Sachs European division? It's a banking takeover. The Goldman Sachs gang, the Merrill Lynch mob, the J.P. Morgan Chase criminals. None of their heads roll. We did a misdeed. We misspoke. Yeah. We misled. They get away with murder. They've murdered the society. They've murdered capitalism. They've murdered how many people's lives that lost their homes, lost their jobs because of criminality. But we'll call it misdeeds because we gotta be proper.
You don't think any of these guys are going to be, I was reading in last week in USA Today and I started laughing. They said criminal charges may be next for the big bankers. Come on.
Come on. That's why we're calling it bankism. It's not capitalism. Capitalism's gone. In capitalism, you rise and fall on your own merits. There's no such thing as too big to fail. And in bankism, you're too big to jail.
And I don't think any of this is going to change with the Republican-held House and Senate. I mean, maybe we'll get some relief on Obamacare. Maybe we'll get to keep our guns, I guess. But none of this was even brought up in the midterm elections about how many fines these bankers have paid and what the criminality. I mean, they ought to be prosecuted criminally. I mean,
Of course they should. Of course the elections won't make any difference. Look what just happened. 36% of the Americans came out to vote. That's the lowest since World War II. And the war had just begun, so there was not, it wasn't a big deal to go vote. The world was at war. Everybody was kind of satisfied with what was going on then. This is unprecedented. You're looking in New York State. We had a 28% turnout. The people, they're disgusted with the entire system. Here, 95% of Congress got reelected. Nothing changed. And it's the same gang. Look, voting to me, again, you know my motto of the Trends Journal, think for yourself. I'm not a proselytizer. I could care what people believe or don't believe. I just say it the way I see it. Fine if you like it, fine if you don't. Let's make it nice here. I
believe your phrase is a political atheist.
Yeah, I'm a political atheist. And as I look at the Republicans and Democrats, voting for any one of them is the equivalent of voting for the Bloods and the Crips. And I don't say that sarcastically. They're mass murderers. They start wars based on lies. Whether it was Vietnam or Iraq, you remember them weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda and the Gulf of Tonkin incident that never happened the way they said it was. And they're thieves. Again, they rob our money in the name of too big to fail and tax breaks for their buddies and any kind of other scam they can make up to steal our dough to give it to them.
What do you think we have first? Do we have a crash in the economy, in the stock market? Do we have some kind of unforeseen black swan? Or do we get war and then the economy crashes and, we're going to blame it on Russia or ISIS or Iran or Israel or whoever? What do we get first? Do we get war or do we get an economic crash in your forecasting?
I don't know. But if I were to make a projection, I would say first will come the economic calamity. But you don't know what will cause it. So, for example, when 9/11 happened, they closed down Wall Street. If there's a terrorist strike, false flag or real, that could cause, they'll blame the economic conditions on these terrorists. ISIS did it. Yeah, okay, right, great, I understand. Yeah, ISIS, really. Come on. But they'll use it as an excuse, so you don't know, if it's heads or tails. But the coin will be flipped.
And I'm going to, just while you brought up ISIS, I mean, the policy in the Middle East, I've been scratching my head. It's just nonsensical. I get, if there's a plan, I'd love to know what it is. Now ISIS says that they're going to join forces with Al-Qaeda. I guess that was the moderate rebels. And they're going to go after Syria. I don't know why. We never even voted on we're going to take down Syria. I mean, all of a sudden it just became, our national goal that we had to have Assad go. We need to take down Syria. Why? Are we going to give the country to ISIS? We're going to give the country to Al-Qaeda? I mean, what do you think about it now? Doesn't that make Obama's job a little harder? That now you're going to go after Syria with Al-Qaeda for us? We're going to keep bombing them? What are we going to do?
It's madness. Look what they did with Libya. We got to get rid of that Gaddafi. Remember that one? Oh yeah, great job, guys. Terrific, man. You turned the whole place into chaos, and you created the conditions for more destabilization around the area, and people like ISIS and these other people got the guns now and the weaponry. Brilliant job. Terrific. Keep it going. There's one failure after another, Greg. You could start with the American military has not won a substantial victory since World War II. They lost Korea. You lost in Vietnam. They lost Afghanistan, the longest war in American history. And now we're back in Iraq. Oh, they have a strategy? I have a strategy. Here's my strategy. Stop trying to fix what you can't fix and fix something at home. And then after you straighten it out over here, go over there and show me how brilliant you are. And by the way, you know, people say to me often, you know, you point out a lot of what's going on wrong. What do you suggest to change it? So on May 2nd, 2015, we're launching Occupy Peace. The website's occupypeace.us. And from the most historic four corners in the United States, right here in Colonial Kingston, the only place on each corner where there's a pre-Revolutionary War building. Our message is simple. It's honor thy founding fathers, beginning with George Washington, who at his farewell address, a real commander-in-chief, not a cat that played golf, basketball, drove a pickup truck, and had a bad attitude. This is a guy that led the troops, a real commander-in-chief in war. His farewell address, as you well know, no foreign entanglements. Madison, Franklin, Adams. The world was at war then. They knew what was best for this country, and that is to keep our presence at home. So in Occupy Peace, we want to seal the borders, bring the troops home, rebuild America, stop squandering our precious money on foreign entanglements that are only destabilizing more areas and building more hatred against the United States.
When the economy finally falls, what is it going to look like to the man on the street? Are we going to have inflation, deflation, both? First deflation, then inflation? I don't know. What's it going to look like to the man on the street?
It's going to be an inflation, but not a currency. It's going to be a currency devaluation rather than a commodity inflation. So, for example, oil. We're seeing oil prices going down. As the currency becomes devalued, it'll cost you more to buy that commodity whose price has also been devalued because they just keep printing more money and putting it into the global systems. And again, it's not only the United States. You look what's going on in China. You know, there's estimates that there are 70 million luxury apartments they can't sell in China. And then you read the data, what's going on. The government's boosting the economy. They just announced last week that they're dumping in another, $120 billion into infrastructure. And that's the difference, by the way, between China and the United States. China builds the infrastructure, and they put the money to build the economy. Our money's going to building war. So what does it look like? You see it already in the streets. You see where this country's going. You're going to see more violence in the streets when people lose everything and have nothing left to lose. They lose it. And they're losing it worldwide.
2014, we're going to get a dislocation in the gold markets. I mean, they're selling near record numbers of silver eagles. I think they're a couple of million coins away. They've sold 40-some-odd million about so far. Do you think we're going to get some kind of a hiccup or some kind of we're sold out, or over in COMEX or with the LBMA? James Turk said that's where all the action is overseas. It's the LBMA. That's where they buy and sell metals, basically, for the most part. Do you think that we'll have a non-delivery at the end of 14 or at the beginning of 15, that they'll just shut it down, that there'll be no more to deliver?
No, I think that here's my forecast for gold. And I've been writing about it in the Trends Journal. It's no secret. I had said when gold was around 1,200 that it had a downside risk of between $100 and $150. Matter of fact, we even sent it out before prices really hit the last big shot out. We do a Trends monthly. And I'm in gold for the long haul. Why would I want to be in Bitcoins, bucks, or anything else when I see what's going on? So you had mentioned, you went down the list. They rigged the LIBOR. That's not a conspiracy theory. It's a fact. The interest rates to what? Over the period, about $700 trillion. You mentioned the Forex. What do they trade each day in currencies trades? $5.3 trillion, and as you pointed out, a slap on the wrist. I forgot how you said it. Better than that.
A rounding
But you
error.
said-
I think it's 4.2 or 3 billion between all the banks that did it, supposedly.
Yeah, you mentioned they're just a nothing. So, yes, and now of course the Germans are looking into the rigging of the gold market. So to me it's a rigged game. And the game only stays rigged for so long. And I don't buy gold to speculate. My first buy of gold, by the way, Greg, was at 187.50 an ounce back in, I think, 1978. And I used to play the markets, but I buy it for possession. So that's the way I look at it. So gold could go down more, but I'm in gold, as I say, for my golden years. Why would I want to invest in anything when I know that they're keeping interest rates low worldwide to juice their markets? Oh, look what's going on in Russia. The ruble's getting slammed. 45% of their GDP is based on oil sales and gas sales. And you're seeing those commodities go down. Look what's going on over there in the Middle East with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait. They have to keep oil prices. The real number that I'm hearing, it has to be around $100 a barrel for Brent in order to keep things not from erupting over there, because so much of their GDP is basically oil-based. And the natives are restless. You go back to when the Arab Spring started breaking out, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, one after another, Bahrain, all of those countries started flooding their economies with cheap money to keep the people happy from revolting, because a couple of people own everything. Oh, and by the way, not making that one up either. Did you see the new number that came out? 85 people in the world are worth as much as half the world. 3.5 billion people have less money than 85 people. You think the conditions for war are good?
Very good. And Gerald Celente, publisher of the Trends Journal, thank you so much for being on for our preview of what's coming in 2014 and 2015. Thank you so much for helping guide the way with the Trends Journal Light. We appreciate that, Gerald Celente. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.